Tonight's edition of Arizona Giving and Leading looks at better and more informed giving. A big chunk of charity donations occur during the holidays, and there are ways to make sure your gift goes where intended. Joining us now is Robert Ashcraft, Executive Director of ASU's Lodestar Center for Philanthropy and Nonprofit Innovation. Good to see you back on Arizona
Thank you.
Horizon.
Pleasure to be here.
How do you ensure your donations are going to reputable folks?
It's a great question, and particularly this time of year, I would think of it really, it's the $258 billion question, which is the amount that individuals donated to charitable causes in the last time the data were collected in 2014. So that's a huge question. And out of that number, roughly anywhere, it depends on the community, but about 40% rushes in November and December. So I offer that as sort of a framework for this conversation. It's huge. You know, Ted, there's several things to think about, and it's not one size fits all. There's no easy answer. One cut of this would be the kind of organization that a household or an individual would be intimately familiar with. Maybe it's a school, maybe it's a child care center, a hospital, maybe it's the symphony, something that they intimately, as a patron or as a client, have witnessed firsthand and are a part of, feel grateful for. One could suggest that a charitable donation could be given without a huge amount of analysis of finances and all the other things that would be more important if one had an area of interest, that a purpose, something they care about, that they were less informed about what kind of organization would even be out there that would hit that philanthropic heart. Does that make sense?
Sure,
yeah.
but let's say during the year something touched you, whether it's a health issue or you adopted an animal, whatever the case may be. Something hit you and you thought, I'd like to donate to those folks or folks like that. How do you know, what questions do you ask?
Yeah, that's great. So we think of this in two or three ways. One is the issue of transparency. The question is the nonprofit in question transparent in how it is that they articulate their mission, their programs, their inputs, outputs, impact, all the ingredients that involve the organization realizing its mission, expressing that to donors, and then I would say evidence-based. Are they transparent about what the evidence would be that demonstrates the impact? And so for many individuals, and again, the majority of folks that give in philanthropy, it's not foundations, it's not corporations and businesses, it's actually individuals. People are surprised with that you know, they often lead with their heart, and the argument here would be add the head to the heart. Ask some of those questions, and transparency becomes a huge issue.
But let's say that my favorite charity, or the charity I'm most interested in, their transparency isn't all that great, and yet I want to make sure my donation is private. I don't want them necessarily telling, spilling their guts to the rest of the world here. I mean, what kind of balance is played there?
Right. Well, it is a balance. Now, there are certain metrics, if you will, and most donors don't go to this level, but one could. And that is, has the donor been able to see the Form 990, which is the IRS form that one has to file and declare, particularly when they're over a certain size nonprofit, that articulates all kinds of analysis, including things like compensation and ratios about program to administration and all of that. So, I mean, it's a question to ask. It should be transparent. It's readily available online if one knows where to go. But there's a lot of other issues, too, about issues of boards and governance. The issues of even the regularity of meetings that are open or transparent, I'll use that word again, in governing the life of an organization. These are nonprofits that have a public purpose, a charitable purpose, and therefore the veil and the shroud of darkness and secrecy is to be taken away.
How serious a problem are shady nonprofits and charitable organizations, especially at this time of year?
Yeah, well, often it's focused on this time of year because this is the holiday season. This is the season where people take pause and there's a generosity of spirit, and which is a great part of community, right? I'm not so sure that there's any more evidence that it's a December problem versus a March problem or what have you. Nor should it be said that because there are these exceptions that do get in the press and become very popular in storytelling around embezzlement or around scandals that happen, that somehow that taints an entire nonprofit sector. That's an unfortunate tainting, it seems to me. But nonetheless, one should practice a discipline just as one would do in investing, frankly, in other avenues of their life, of their pursuits.
What about websites, Charity Navigator, GuideStar, Better Business Bureau has a website as well that has some information. Are they worth checking into?
Well, so the stance would be this: yes, worth checking into, but then with some cautious interpretation. And you've just named the majority. There's several, but those are the big ones. You know, it's difficult to reduce a nonprofit down to a star. To a single variable number, and that's what some of the what they are called watchdog sites do. And this is complicated work, and it's difficult. There are reasons and explanations around why it is that certain ingredients culminate in a certain score, and that's where this further probing and questioning. Actually visiting an organization, if it's place-based, some are not place-based, but those that have buildings and structures, making an appointment to actually see staff, inviting oneself in an appropriate way to engage in some way. Become a volunteer if it's a volunteer type organization. I mean, there's ways to actually get up close and personal in a high touch kind of way that then marries what I've argued is the heart with the head in making a charitable gift.
Now, I understand there are really no state agencies, though, that verify charitable organizations. And basically, you find out they're bad when someone complains, correct?
When they throw the flag,
when
the
they throw the
whistle
flag.
is flown, that's correct.
Is that something we should be looking at changing?
Well, so there are 30x states that actually have a charitable bureau or a state level organization whose purpose actually is to focus on the charitable sector. Here, nonprofits would register with the Corporation Commission, and then if there is any sense that there's something has run afoul or a person has a great concern, then that's the matter of the Attorney General, and that's just the way Arizona is, structured. I think the larger potential here is, remember that the mainstream of nonprofits are well-intentioned, mission-driven, high-impact focus. They obviously do what they do to make the community a better place, and that would be, the mainstream. So the self-regulation. I mean, nobody wants a stronger, more accountable, appropriate nonprofit sector than the vast majority of the nonprofits, and that's been pretty much the stance, at least in places like Arizona.
All right, great information for this time of year, for all times of
year.
You bet,
actually, particularly this time of year.
Yeah, good to have you here. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much. My pleasure.